Iraq, as you know, is a new state. It was created after World War I by the British in 1920. It was carved out, and for 38 years it was a conservative pro-Western monarchy, the Hashemites. By and large, during these decades, the bilateral relationship between Iran and Iraq was overall good. There were some junctures where relations became turbulent and problematic, but by and large, because you had two regimes, two governments, which were largely conservative monarchies, pro-Western, relations were good, and they were allies. They were also, as you know, in 1955, when you had the creation of the Baghdad Pact, including Britain and Pakistan and Turkey, backed by the US, they were both part of it. Relations really deteriorated after the overthrow of the Iraqi monarchy in terms of the new revolutionary Arab nationalist regimes that came to power, and Iran's view, the Shah's views, the conservative pro-Western monarchy in Iran of that. And then eventually things became even more problematic after Ayatollah Khomeini came to power in Iran, in terms of Iraq being one of the few Arab countries where you have a Shia majority, which also felt aggrieved by the rule of the Ba'ath, politically and socioeconomically disenfranchised, and Khomeini also encouraged the Iraqi Shia to resist the regime, and things deteriorated after that with of course, with the eruption of the Iran-Iraq War, and then relations continued to be frosty throughout the years, the 15 period that followed up until the US-led invasion of Iraq. Things improved gradually then, of course, after the 2005 elections, and, you know, with first Nouri al-Jafari becoming Prime Minister of Iraq, and then under Nouri al-Maliki, as I said, relations improved, and Iran, of course, was able to exert a lot of power and influence in Iraq. But at the same time, as I believe, al-Maliki was not necessarily an Iranian stooge or puppet. He was trying to, you know, go down his own path, but at times when, because of necessity, political expediency, and what was happening, he basically had to go along with Iran and try to accommodate Iranian demands and all that. But I think, you know, Iraq in general, I think, will try to go its own path, but at the same time, I think both countries see a necessity, if at all possible, and if there are no major ideological differences between the two neighbors, to try to cooperate and work together on various fronts, whether it's political, economic, security affairs, so on and so forth. Right now, in view of the gravity of the situation with regard to the crisis with ISIS, I think Iran is going to do all it can to try to prop up the government of Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, and also the Kurds in the north, to try to stem the ISIS advance and to roll them back and eliminate them. So in that sense, I think there's going to be very close cooperation between the two, and Iran is going to do all that it can, both indirectly in terms of providing support, and if it really necessitates, in terms of committing its own forces to try to affect the military situation on the ground. You mentioned the nuclear issue. Of course, I think Iraq and other states in the region do not want Iran to have nuclear capability or have a nuclear arsenal, in terms of that would, you know, probably have a knock-on effect, and it would serve as impetus for other countries in the region to go down the path of proliferation, nuclear proliferation, and that, of course, is something that would be very problematic both for the region and for the world. Very close. They've had a long-standing alliance for 35 years, and there are two regimes which have very different ideologies, and in many instances they've had conflicting agendas and disputes and differences. But because of the fact that the relation has been very long-standing, it's matured, it's been consolidated. They've overcome a lot of differences, a lot of obstacles and impediments in the history and the evolution of the relationship. And for example, during the Iran-Iraq war, with Syria helping Iran, and also after the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in '82, Iran helping Syria in its backyard in Lebanon. And also after 2003, both countries, in terms of try to harmonize their policies on Iraq. At the same time, they had very different they had very different views of the situation in Iraq, although they both, in various instances, were helping fuel the insurgency, but they had very different agendas and perceptions of the U.S.-led invasion occupation. Right now, of course, over the past 3 years since the eruption of the crisis in Syria, Iran is doing all it can to help the regime survive. Ideally, it would like it to survive, but in view of the fact that it's been going so long and it's draining Iranian resources, if there is a possibility for some sort of negotiated settlement or face-saving way out, I think Iran would try to go for that. There are 3 dimensions. You have the regime against the opposition, and in terms of you have Iran, the Iraqi government, and Hezbollah supporting the regime. Also on the other side, you've had, since 2011, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and some of the other Gulf states supporting the opposition. And on the international level, you've had the United States and its allies supporting the opposition in various ways, directly or indirectly. And on the other side, you've had Russia, which has had a long-standing relationship with the Syrian regime in terms of as a political ally, wanting to keep it out of the Western camp. The Syrian port of Tartus serving as a naval base for the Russians, and Syria being the second largest arms purchaser from Russia. All these things, I think, basically have meant that Russia has aligned itself on the Syrian side. So in that sense, you know, the conflict has those 3 levels: the domestic, the regional, the international. So it's become a proxy war with so many different actors having the proverbial pie in the Syrian finger in the Syrian pie. So that's what makes it very complex to solve. Because I think there is a fear, both in terms of in Washington, the United States, and Russia and others, that, you know, if they up the ante, this could lead to a major international conflict or whatever. I don't want to say World War III, but you never know, because it's just there's so many entangling alliances and linkages and all that, I think. And so I think the Obama administration is being very careful, also in view of the fact that one of its aims has been to disengage or get American troops out of Iraq and Afghanistan, in terms of committing troops and then, well, even, you know, becoming embroiled in a very problematic conflict in Syria. That's the last thing that it wants.